But yeah, if you get a chance, go watch that movie. It's good. I think it's it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
Okay. And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here, where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever. And speaking of mobile development, we've been doing a desktop development series here for several weeks now. I mean, we were like 4 or 5 videos in, 5 weeks in. So if you haven't been tuning in, now would be a good time to go over to youtube.com/coronageek. And there is I think there's a playlist there. If not, there will be by the time you watch this. Make a note. And
you mentioned it.
And you mentioned it. No, I think there is a playlist that's ongoing there, and there's definitely one we've created playlists for all the shows that we've done in 2015. We've created snippets, so 10-minute little segments, bite-sized little segments, if you will, that you can go and watch. So there's playlists for that. But it's all over at youtube.com/coronageek, and you're going to want to follow along with what we're doing because Ed has done all the heavy lifting for you. He's even provided code that you can download. You can totally dig through it and explore it and break it and make it your own. And you can go back and watch the videos and follow along step by step of what's happening here. So if you don't understand something, Ed's explained it for you in detail, which is, again, what we're going to do today. So joining us today is Ed Marina from roaminggamer.com. And also joining us is Stephen Johnson from ZibalbaStudios.com. Zibalba!
See? I give you a bad time, but it's going to stick in people's minds pretty soon.
That's right. That's right. You can't get that kind of branding. You got to get that. That's viral right there.
I'm just saying, your name's more exciting. Your site name, your company name is more exciting than mine. So it's like I got to say it. I mean, who goes around saying I'm a gamer?
The syllables just don't work. Right. The syllables just don't lend themselves. Maybe that's what we all need to do. Is we need to just rebrand ourselves in something that's like, so you can just yell in a crowd.
You got a good brand name if kids are like saying it all the time and you say it and then they take it to school and they go Zibalba, 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 and the teacher's like, whatever you taught your kid, make him stop doing that. All right, please.
That's exactly it.
My brother is gonna hate me if I teach my nephew or niece how to do that.
You should do it, man. I'm unmuting my. I said you should do it.
Funny. Well, hey, do we have any announcements before we get into today's topic?
Yeah, briefly.
Go ahead.
So last week, I'm so pretty messed up. Last week, I mentioned that I had a new game coming out. It is now out. By the time you watch this, not live, it should be out. It's cycling through you know how it takes a while to get through the caches on iTunes? So I flipped the switch this morning, and for all I know, it's live. I don't know. And then Google Play is having a problem. For anybody, if you're out there having problems today getting to your pricing and distribution settings, it's a known issue. You don't need to bug them like I did. So that'll be out on Google Play too anytime they get that all working.
Oh, cool. And what's the name of the game?
I was going to show it to you instead, actually.
Okay. And the name of the game?
And the name of the game is Picture Perfect Memory. That's not it. That's our game. And I have it under a strange thing called 02 Game. That's the folder it's under. Yes, I don't always name the folders the same as the game. So here I'm running it in simulator. I just wanted to give a quick rundown because this is kind of an exciting game for me because it's got a lot of things that are different from what I've normally done before. First of all, it's not just me. It's Mike over at Crave Create. Oh, I can't pause. Come on, man. Be with it. Mike. Okay, it's not going to work with me. Mike over at Crave Creative. Mike Hempfling. I always say Mike H, but I'm going to say his full name today. He and I worked on this together. And what it is, basically, is a memory game where you can play it against yourself. Now it's paused, of course. Man, I'm doing a terrible job of demoing this game. And what you do is you start the game up, and it presents you with a sequence of images and names for those images. So we had orange and lemon in that sequence, and you simply recall them or click them in that order, and every round is more of these images. Now, you can get different themes for this game, so we have a whole bunch of different art themes for this. And for Corona folks out there, the way we did this is through in-app purchases of consumables. So you can buy coins and then use coins to unlock different themes. You get 2 themes unlocked in the beginning, which is the fruit and the YouTubers theme. We thought that'd be cool.
Nice.
So, sorry, Charles, you're not in here, my friend.
No, that's great. That's got a viral appeal for sure, right? I think that's cool.
So we're trying for that, but we're ready if we get hopefully we don't get a cease and desist on this, but if we do, we are ready, because the other cool thing we did with this game is it's got, besides single player mode, it's got multiplayer mode. So let me go back home.
Well, hold on, before you get to go, I want to say one thing. One, these YouTubers that you have in this list are much more with it than old school media, so I do not think you will get a cease and desist. I mean, they want anybody talking about them, right? And the second thing is, have you tagged these guys on this game? Like,
we're doing that. We're doing that as we speak. We're in the process of doing the marketing blitz. Actually, the marketing blitz is warming up this week. We're trying to get all this stuff going at the same time.
Okay.
So me telling folks here on the show is sort of like a preview. The real marketing blitz starts next week. So our plan here is we've got it out on the store now, and we're going to go do one more check to make sure everything is good, because as much as you test before it goes live, sometimes you got to test it one more time when it is live for things like in-app purchase and all that good stuff, just to make sure you did everything right. And then we got a lot of stuff in here that is dynamic in the sense that we were pretty sure we knew what it was, but we didn't know 100%. For example, store links and rating links and stuff like that. Those things are always a little bit goofy. And that's what I wanted to say was exciting about this project was, in addition to being a single-player game, it's multiplayer, and it's got 2 basic multiplayer modes. You can invite your friends to play, and you can invite as many friends to play as you want. And the way that works is you send out an invite, and then you set a limit on how long the game will last, say 1 day, 24 hours. And then I could invite Bill and Ted for an excellent adventure to play in my game, and then they would get an invite in their queue of games. They'd get an invite over here. They'd also get a push notification, and they could play that game anytime in the next 24 hours. They don't have to play right now when I'm playing. They can play anytime they want. And when we've all played, it will accumulate the gameplays in their stats, and then I can go see who they played against. And oh, look, we're all very lousy players on this game. We all got 0. But basically, what I canceled this game. So, but they'll accumulate all their scores, and then they can go check them out later. And then they'll get a notification when the game is over. So, like Bill and Ted played, and then I finally played. They would get a push notification and a little flag in their game that says, "Hey, that game just got done," so they can go check it out. But as I was saying, well, I should complete this. So there's friend games, and then there's there's another mode called daily games. And a daily game is where you get to play. The server will select a random theme, and it will select a random seed, and so you can just play this game over and over, trying to outdo everybody else who's playing the daily game. Okay. So, for example, Apple Banana is the first 2 on this one.
So it's a community aspect to it.
Yeah, and so then you goof up, and you can go to the stats, and you can see right now there's not going to be very many people out there at all because it's just us. And there's a grand total today of 2 players, and there's 9 hours and 50 minutes left to finish this game before it winds around to the next one. And it'll show like the top 5 players and where you rank with them, if you rank with them at all. But the last bit that I was going to say that is really exciting is you want to control your game sort of later. You don't want to have to re-release it if you make a mistake. So one thing we did on this game is we put a whole bunch of features in here that are controlled from the server. So they got default settings when they load. And then let's say I made a mistake on like the Twitter link or the rating link. So when you click the rating button, it took you to the wrong place. All I got to do is go update our server, and then the next time somebody loads this game, it'll ping the server and say, "Do you have an update for me?" It'll get it, and then if they click the rating button at that point, it'll work. Everything will be golden. So we've controlled all kinds of features in this game from our server to allow us to do a lot of back-end control and make it completely invisible to the community or the people using it. So, anyways, pretty exciting. I mean, it was a lot of work, and I don't know if I said it already, but it's got a Coronium backend to do that, and that worked really good, really good. And
did I see a Jason Schroeder radial timer, or was that your variation of the concept?
Actually, that was Jason's radial timer. You're right. I took and did a variety of Jason's. Where did I put that? Where was that?
So you've got Mike. I'm assuming Mike did some of the graphics and stuff, right? Or
yeah, so these are graphic packs. So the way that worked is Mike had some of these already in his previously purchased set of art assets, and then he made some additional changes. Mike's part on this, I mean, we both had different parts, but one of Mike's big parts on this was just doing the layout and getting the visuals right and the aesthetics and stuff like that, whereas my job here was doing like server programming and that bit.
Okay, so Mike's kind of doing visual / game design, and then
he's also doing a lot of the marketing part.
And then
he's doing it all.
And then you've got Jason's radial timer thing, and then Coronium on the back end. So it's kind of a community project.
Endeavor.
Yeah, I love it.
Sort of.
Yeah. In that people things that people who contributed in the past are finding their way into it. Not in the sense that you're going to send them any money.
There's his radial timer. Actually, yes, and we used his Twitter plugin.
Oh, good.
Yeah, his rocking Twitter plugin.
Well,
if you want to test his Twitter plugin, just come over here and tweet a little bit.
There you go.
Tell people how much you love this game by just tweeting.
Well, this is good. I like it. So I had a question about coins instead of item purchases. You said in there that you would buy coins and then you could buy these packs. Why did you guys pick coins versus just doing an in-app purchase that just unlocks the pack itself?
Well, because we got a number of themes here, and we have the option to add more as we go along.
Yeah.
As you can see, we've got quite a few art themes, and so we wanted to experiment with monetization.
Yeah.
But we didn't think. Our options here are basically what? Give us money and unlock everything, or give us some money and unlock some things. Now the thing is we also realize that there's different kinds of players. There's players who will never spend any money, and then there's players who will spend money. But we want to make everybody happy. So what we're doing here is you can buy coins, but you also earn coins for all kinds of actions. We have a whole bunch of achievements for getting to different levels of the game, for single-player, daily, and friends. You also get coins and rewards for inviting friends to games or joining friends' games, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the more you play, the more coins you get. So if you're really on a budget and you can't afford to buy the coins, then you can just play it a lot and get more themes that way.
Are there any kind of interstitial ads or anything like that?
Yes, there are also ads, and we use Vungle ads. And the way it works is it's kind of we put an interesting algorithm in here, which we also can control from the server if we feel like it's not balancing correctly. But the way it works is you launch the app the first time, no ads. But the next time you launch the app, you get an ad. So we use that strategy like you've seen a lot with Catch App and other games where you get that launch ad. And then if you play a certain number of games, in either case, once you reach a certain critical mass of having played a certain number of games and you go to play another game, you'll get a Vungle ad. This is the part where the algorithm comes in. So I won't tell you exactly what the algorithm is, but there's an algorithm on the back end that decides when it's appropriate to do these ads, and it changes the frequency of the ads based on certain conditions. So, and then of course, if you don't like ads, you have two ways to get rid of them. You can pay an in-app purchase to get rid of them, and then that's forever going to be yours. Even if you uninstall and reinstall the game, then you can just restore it and turn off the ads again. Or you can use coins. So if you've been playing a lot and you've got enough coins, then you just simply use your coins and turn off the ads.
Interesting.
But the only problem with using coins in that case is that if you do uninstall the app and then reinstall the app, that was a consumable usage, and so there's no way to restore that.
Interesting. Yeah,
Although
I was hoping
maybe in the next release we'll figure out a better way to do that.
I was hoping that you would say that you were using coins over a direct purchase, because then you could wait it so that they'd have more coins than what the item cost, and then that would leave them with a surplus, which would encourage them to buy more coins.
Well, that is actually exactly, that is part of the strategy. Part of the strategy is to let them get a taste. So people start off with 50 coins, and then you quickly ascend to 100 coins. It's very easy to get to 100 coins, and you can go off and buy a theme and decide if you like the idea of buying themes and being able to control your game that way. And then we assume, I mean, this is the sort of like get your foot in the door sort of scenario. Once you've got them buying themes, then people may be more likely to get more themes, which means they're either going to play more to earn the coins, or they may just break down and say, I'll buy a coin pack and get more themes. Now, here's a cool thing, too, about this game. If you play a daily game and the theme is not in your catalog, it unlocks temporarily, so you can play it on the daily game if the theme, so for example, let's say the daily theme was the wizard theme or the bakery theme and I didn't have it, I could still play it in the daily mode. Also, if a friend of mine invited me to a game where they had selected the casino theme and I didn't have it, I could still play my friend and I would temporarily have the casino theme as I was playing. So just because you don't have a theme doesn't mean you can't play it if you've got a friend who's got that theme. So that's another strategy people might evolve.
Do you ask them at any point if they want to keep that theme? Like you've temporarily given it to them. Do you ask them if they want to keep it?
I don't know. We do not. I do know the answer to that. We do not, but I do not know. We might consider doing that.
The reason I ask is that people generally will work harder to keep from losing something than they will to gain something, right? If they feel like it's a sense of loss. So I'm wondering if you let them have it while they're playing a game with somebody else, and then make them aware that it's going to go away, if they would feel inclined to purchase it. I don't know.
Well, that's not a bad idea. I'm writing it down. You can probably hear me scribbling over here with a pencil. Yes, I'm.
Don't worry, the show is being recorded. You can watch it again later.
Well, I think doing the show is all the time I have for Charles. Watching myself talk, I don't like that.
Yeah, right.
So I'm very excited about this because
I'm very excited too. I like this.
It's a culmination of a lot of different things that I've never done before. Working with somebody else on a game, multiplayer game like this, having a backend that controls the thing, it's like all this cool stuff. And now Mike and I are sort of set up to work on our next game, which I'm not going to lay out because actually he's selecting the next game that we're working on, and then we're going to agree on it. So it's a little bit nebulous at this point.
I like this. I like that you've stretched yourself. You're doing things that you're curious about, but are kind of outside your comfort zone or something that you've done in the past. And I also like that that you're teaming up with someone. It seems like there are a few stories that I know of in the community of people who are doing things by themselves and doing fairly well at it. And whether they're actually doing it to themselves or they're just sort of hiring it out to other people, they are the poster child for their activities or whatever, right? But in most cases, it seems like at least two people are working together, and that seems to be a good combo, right? We've seen Glitch Games. We've got LaserDog. Those guys are working together. Anytime that two people can kind of come together and balance their talents against each other seems to work really well.
I would agree with you. Working on a team is always, in my opinion, significantly better in terms of productivity than working by yourself, as long as you get along with your cohort, your coworker. Yeah, it sometimes doesn't go well. And I know about that too. So,
which the interesting piece there would probably be just to start with something small and see how it goes.
Yeah, so we thought we were starting with something small. This ended up being like a 3-month project. So the problem was is we severely underestimated the difficulty of the multiplayer aspect. Or I should own up to that. I said that it sounded like something I could do pretty easily, but I was completely fooling myself. And I knew better, and yet I still did it. I still said it. So
Well,
Mike, he bore with me during this whole process, but I'm sure that at points he was probably ready to pull his hair out as I was trying to fix these things.
I'm sure from a prototyping standpoint, you were able to bang something out pretty quickly, but
Oh,
then.
we had what you're looking at right here.
Uh-huh.
Aside from the multiplayer, we had this in a week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I would say we had this easily within 2 weeks. If Mike is hearing this and disagreeing, somewhere between 1 and 2 weeks. Well, it's my memory is.
But you were the guy that said that we could do that
Sure,
pretty easily
2
too,
weeks
yeah.
we
So.
had an operational game, single player.
Right.
It was everything after that was dealing with the big thing was the multiplayer, and then we had to deal with game stats. So gathering, we have all kinds of statistics in here. We track when you play, what your favorite themes are, what time of day you play best, on what theme. Just details about like daily games that you've played and who were the best players, what your best score was, all your friend matches that you play. We keep track of the last 100 friend matches. And then, if that weren't enough, then we had to deal with all the achievements, and we have a myriad of achievements in this game. So, and then keep track of all of these in the different game modes was a challenge. So there was a lot of work here that was just like balancing. Like we had to play around a lot with getting the coin counts right and stuff like that. Initially, our coin reward, we started off at 95 coins, and on the premise that we'd start at 95 coins, and then somebody would play around, and as soon as they played one single player round, one multiplayer round, or whatever, they'd get 5 more coins pretty much almost instantly. And then they'd get prompted, hey, would you like to buy a theme? Because you just earned enough coins to buy one, and we see you've never bought a theme before. But the problem was we realized that it was too early. So there were a number of issues with this strategy, and so we had to play around with different values.
Yeah, there's no. You can't just feed it in one side of the machine and get a response out the other side of the machine, right? It's not like a calculator where you can just do the math and you're like, oh, look, there's the answer.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts in this game too. I mean, all these fly-in, you're not seeing a lot of it right now, but you got all these different fly-ins, and when you score, you get these little bubbles at the top that, not bubbles, but like banners and ribbons and stuff, and then you could get push notifications, and getting all that stuff to balance against each other was challenging because you have to be careful about asynchronous events coming in and messing up your animations and fly-ins and stuff like that.
Okay, so 2 questions.
Okay.
I'll have to come back to the first one because I forgot what it was. But the second one is, I remember what the first one is. The first one is, you say you're collecting all these stats, and as you flip through the app here, we can see that you're expressing some of them in like sort of leaderboard fashion and stuff like that. Do you have plans for a analytics on the backside where you can kind of like see what's going on, or how are you going to use that tracking, or is it tracking to that degree?
Well, one, we don't track players in the sense that we are not tracking anything about individuals. So when you play this game, you're playing anonymously. You create an account on our site, and you can optionally put your password in there, or not password, but your email, in case you should lose your credentials and need details. But all of that stuff's encrypted. But as far as tracking data, yes, we do accumulate data on the back end. I could, if I was really with it, I could have brought up the. Let me fill in the gap here with a moment here. Say la 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 la. Where is it? Where are you? There we go. I want to bring it up before I want you to see all the other junk. Here it is. I got a list of all my servers. I got to pull up the right one.
Yeah, I wouldn't suspect that you guys would be tracking individuals, but we've talked about this before. Where we're talking about analytic or metric-driven design. This idea that, if people don't use this menu option, then I don't need to have it, or if they don't get to this level, then maybe I need to make some sort of adjustment.
Yeah, give me a second here. I'll just bring this up.
Okay.
So what we got here is, I'm not going to drill down into everything, but what you can see here is we've got a database of all kinds of details, app settings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we keep track of all the games, the daily games, the friend games. And so we could, in fact, if we wanted to, harvest this information as far as how people did, what themes they played, stuff like that. Definitely, we could do that.
Okay. Yeah, so I just think it would be good to know just aggregate data, what's going on, stuff like that. Okay, so the second question was geared towards measuring success. I mean, you guys put a lot of work into this. How do you measure success? When do you say, like, it's got 300 users, or look, it's got a million users.
In Tahiti,
yeah.
Success.
Well, then, yeah, right, sure. I mean, clearly, those types of numbers, but like, let's just say, for example,
yes,
it has moderate success, and you're like, well, I think there's a point where people have to decide whether or not they're going to continue to spend time on a project. So, for you guys, and I know I'm asking you to talk for Mike as well, where do you guys think the success is? Have you talked about that?
We have talked about it a little bit, and as the word is nebulous here, it's nebulous in our discussions. As far as we've gotten in terms of defining success is level 1 success, I guess, and I just make up these terms, we don't use it, but I would say a level 1 in our agreement here is that if we make enough money to pay for the assets that we use to make this and the server time and cost, that would be like a level of success. Still not paying us back for our time, but at least paying for the assets. We would consider this a success if it paid us back for the time we invested, and then something after that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's an intrinsic value in just having done it, and the lessons learned from moving forward.
Definitely. That there's value in having done it, but that's not part of the success. Yeah, you can't use that as part of the success measure, because you could work all day and learn all day and then live in a box.
Right. You never publish anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I don't ask because I mean, this looks like a great game. I'm not asking for any particular reason other than the fact that I think that everybody has to figure out how long they should work on something, and also I think that maybe we jump from thing to thing too quickly, right? And which is my follow-up question was, kind of what's the long-term goal for this? Do you guys want to go to the next level? You want to implement different features?
Yeah, we got some ideas. I'm not going to talk about them here because
no, obviously not. But I'm just saying, do you have? Yeah, do you have?
They're very important. They're great ideas that Mike has had, but they are very strategic and they would be applicable to other games, and we don't want other people to jump us on. Yeah,
sure. And because I see here that you've got that this is really well organized and this is a very solid idea. So it would be easy to think that you could iterate on it. So like you're saying,
we have a plan to iterate on this based on traction.
Okay, cool.
I think really you said success earlier, and the word I would prefer to use is traction. A game's success requires traction. So the first step is traction. Getting people to play, getting enough people consistently playing over time so you can go to the next level.
You want to have traction, not be in traction. Got it.
Yeah, right. We don't want, Guido to visit us and put us in traction. That's right. Yeah, so we got ideas here. I just wanted to say, you said something about the game being well put together and all that, and I just wanted to say that credit goes to Mike for he did a wonderful job of sort of prepping this. So he'd be like my ideal client in a sense, because he did all the work to lay out what the screen should look like and talk about how they should function and all that. And then we had a serious discussion and we negotiated a lot of different things about how things should be placed, or theming and coloring and rules and stuff like that. But as far as the fact that this looks very nice, is Mike should get lots and lots of credit for that, because he really put a lot of effort into conceiving this.
So along those lines, and I'm not asking for you to give me specifics, but how did you break down the reward portion of the conversation versus the risk version of the conversation, right? So like who we've both put time into the project. How do you figure out who gets what?
I'm wondering if I should answer that question. I mean, I want to answer that question.
Well, let me just say, is it a straight up split 50-50? Or is there some other?
So basically, I just said I'm not sure I should answer that question. Then you go, well, so let me just fish until I get the answer I'm looking for.
Well, see, no. See, so sometimes when you ask somebody, like, you want to know how much money they make a year,
Yeah.
you don't ask them for the exact amount. You just say, is it somewhere between, or is it greater than, or less than, right? You just give them a gray area to answer within. I was trying to give you a gray area.
I'm going to answer your question, but before I answer your question with a number, I'm going to say that Mike actually approached me. So back when I might have mentioned something on the show about looking for partners, and I had some folks approach me, and I kind of said, no, that's not really what I meant. But then Mike came to me, and Mike has a catalog. If you don't know who Mike is, first of all, go to cravecreative.com. He has got a humongous catalog. Mike is a great example of somebody who puts his mind to it and gets something done. So he's a good example of somebody who can get a game done. He settles on it, he does it. It's like a fait accompli. If he starts on the game gets done. So Mike came to me and he said, hey, I saw you on the show and you talked about partnering, and I'm not sure if you're really interested or not. And we had a little talk, and it was very tentative. He was tentative. He wasn't sure if it was a good idea, and I was tentative. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. Not because, of any particular warning signs, but just because we both knew that, get the right words in the right order, we both knew that these kind of things can go haywire or south really quickly, right?
Yeah.
He didn't know me. I didn't know him.
Yeah, the divorce rate is very high.
Yeah, the divorce rate on these kinds of combinations is very high. Yes, and the settlement out of court is terrible. So anyways.
And half a dog isn't any good, I'm telling you.
The dog's never going to be the same again, I'm telling you. But finally we agreed that we would work on a project together as an experiment. And then we chose this project thinking it would be quick.
So then we wrote Angry Birds.
Yeah, then we wrote Angry Birds. But then we said what we're going to do this time around, and perhaps later, is that we will just simply split it 50-50. We'll make this thing as simple as possible. We will find a way to balance the cost so that we're each holding a piece of that pie. And then we will simply call it 50-50 because that's just the easiest way to do it. Anybody can do 50-50 math. So the other thing we had to decide is who gets to own the game. Because when you distribute a game, only one person can distribute the game. Now I worked with somebody else once and it didn't go very well, and I don't want to elaborate on that or make anybody feel bad, but one of the difficulties that we encountered was distribution. In point of fact, if you're going to own a property, any kind of property, and what I mean by this is intellectual. So this is a game, it's intellectual property, it's very distinctive. You can't distribute it under two different ownerships. We couldn't say like, well, Mike will do it under Amazon and I'll do it under Google Play and iOS or something like that. That just wouldn't work.
And setting up a separate entity in order to accomplish that is complicated and expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing good on not talking about the shooter thing today, but I think this is a good discussion because people are probably going to be very curious about working in teams. So we decided 50-50, and Mike was very gracious and said that, hey, why don't you go ahead and take the first game and distribute it? And then we said what we would do after that is tentatively do a 50-50, a flip-flop. So the next game Mike would do. Now that may not actually turn out to be true. It all depends that we realized later that was not necessarily a great idea. It's more about the property. If the property makes more sense for one person to distribute than another, because they've already got games like that in their catalog or something, then you want to go with them because there's an association value there too.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you don't know which game is going to be a hit, right? So
yeah. Well, not just that, but let's say you've got 10 puzzle games in your catalog and I've got 10 shooters, and then we make a RPG. Whose catalog do you think would be most appropriate? Probably the shooter, right? More likely. But if we did shooter together, then definitely the shooters would go in my catalog because it just makes sense. Unless, of course, maybe there's other factors too. Mike's probably got a lot more customers than I do for my games, so maybe he's got more eyeballs. But now we're working this stuff out as we go, to be honest. But those are the kind of thoughts that we have and the things we've discussed.
Well, but ownership, branding, distribution and marketing. I mean, these are all topics that everybody has to deal with, whether they're working by themselves or in a team. And then when they partner with somebody or joint venture with somebody, work on a project with somebody, it's certainly a factor because you have to figure out at some point, whose family are you going to go visit for Christmas? I mean, something.
Yeah. I just wanted to say too is we already said this, that working with somebody else has all kinds of benefits, right?
Yeah.
One of the benefits for me about working with Mike is that I'm really strong technically, but I'm terrible with other aspects of this. And one of the aspects I'm terrible with is marketing. I got no clue. I know the right words to say, and I know the topics and interesting articles to read, but when it comes to rubber meeting the road or applying that knowledge, nah, not so much. Mike, on the other hand, he's got a whole recipe. He's got a strategy. He not only has the information, he's got a strategy, which is amazing to me. So we had a talk like a couple weeks ago, and he laid out his strategy. I'm like, really? That's what I was thinking. I don't think I was quite as flabbergasted at the moment, but I was like, wow. Okay, you're definitely doing that part.
So he put some thought into it for sure. Huh? That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, have you seen our site? He did this.
We saw it last time, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, just this is the kind of thing I'm talking about here. Is if I could type, it would already be up. I can remember the URL. So speaking of marketing, Mike did all this. I mean, he just put all this together, lickety split. I mean, he's got the whole thing laid out with the discussion about the game and how to play it, the privacy page, the home page with the banner. It's just like, wow. You don't get this kind of treatment when you do games on my site. My site's just like, go to my site, look for my games page, man. It's good.
Right. So this is good.
I know I'm giving all kinds of laurels to Mike here, but I really should because he did a wonderful job on all of the aspects here. But you know what?
What you're talking about? What you're talking about is leveraging the strengths of the individual.
Yes.
So that's important.
So I know people who are tuning in are like, okay, good. Your game is exciting. Good luck to you. Mike is awesome. You're awesome. Now show us the game already. The other game. The one we came here to learn how to make.
Well, one thing before we go to that, I'm going to switch over here to screen share and show you that Border Leap. I don't know if you guys have seen their Word 2 game.
Yeah, I've been watching this.
What's that? You've been watching it?
Yeah, I've been tracking this.
So they're in the App Store, in Apple's App Store for best new games, and I've downloaded it's like a $2.99 game. I've downloaded it and played it, and it's very good. Nate at Border Leap does a great job of design. It's always very simplistic. Clean is another word for it. Yeah, it's always very intuitive, and they've got talking about marketing and stuff like that. He always does great stuff like the videos and the screenshots and things just to kind of get you excited. And when you open the app, it pulses at you and kind of draws you in to play it and stuff like that. And so they've got a whole back catalog of games you can find on their site over at borderleap.com. I just wanted to mention that because that's another Corona game that you may not know is made with Corona, but just like Hopico. I don't know how to say it,
but Hopico. You say Hopico.
Hopico. I think it's Hopico. It was featured by Apple recently, up in the top list there, and Pop the Lock was featured by Apple, and these are all Corona-made games that there's no branding on them to know that, but they are, and so anyway, go check out Word 2. It's a fun game. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Roger Rabbit.
Okay. We got about 20 minutes left.
Sure, yeah. Well, we can cruise through this. No problem. Let me get my code over here so we can see
Well,
it.
whatever we don't cover today, let's just slide to next week. I mean, we should
Yeah,
be
no,
able to.
that's the way it will always work. Am I talking? Okay, good. I got my microphone on. That's all good. Um, well, there was a possibility that I hadn't been talking. Well, it's
Senility sets in.
so last week we left off with player navigation. We're going to go back to that today. But when you download the game at this point, what you're going to see is some differences. Last week all we had was our dude walking around. Let me go ahead and restart the game, relaunch it here. Now, what you're going to see is I will check in the version that is slightly intelligent. In fact, this is the version we're seeing now. So right now, what we've got is our dude walking around. Dude. And zombies coming in. Now, last week I also showed you the limit. So now you can see that the limit is something reasonable as far as the world size. Last week it was this little tiny red rectangle. And this is still just a debug feature to show you the limits of the world. The other thing you're noticing is these guys are following me around. I don't know if you are noticing that, but they are trying to kill me.
So we have limiting the player's movement to the box. We have spawning enemies, and then we have pathfinding. They're right. They're trying to.
We do not
follow
have
the player.
pathfinding. Right now, what we have is the nickel version of AI.
The nickel version.
This is, yes. Okay, when I make a joke, let's let it kill me. I make a joke, but I can't stress enough. When you're making a game, do not spend $1 if you can spend a nickel. And what I mean by that is, don't do the hard solution first if there's an easy solution available to you. Now, I will describe this easy solution, and you will be amazed, I think, at how simple it is, and yet the fact that is you see me playing here. Let me start it again. Just observe the way they behave, first of all. You'd think that this might be like sort of some kind of tricky algorithm or something, right? I mean, they're giving chase, they're changing direction. No, this is about as simple as it gets. The way this works, I spawn the enemy off screen. I always do that so they don't pop into view. And then I tell them literally, this is how far away I measure the distance, and then I do a transition where I simply calculate the time that transition takes based on the distance. So if they're 500 pixels away, I choose a random speed of say 100 pixels per second, and then I divide 500 by 100, I get 5 seconds. So my transition will run for 5 seconds, and they merely animate and then go in a straight line. The transition just merely moves them from this point to this point. Very, very simple. And when they get there, if I'm not there, if they get there unharmed, unshot with an arrow, and they don't run into me, the thing just says, oh, I got to the end, I'm done. And then it runs the same routine, and it measures the distance to me again, and they start moving again. So all it is one transition complete, do another transition, and then I just simply update the animation that's playing based on the angle they're supposed to be moving in, and that is it. I mean, it's just like 5 lines of code to do really super simple AI where they will try to chase me down. And the only other thing that's going on here is I put a counter in here that says only allow this many zombies to be in the game at a certain time, or enemies. And currently the number I think is 10, which felt like a good balance for doing the demo. So when you get up to 10 enemies, I'll just let them come in without killing me here. I can manage that. As you can see,
It's like a chase
10
game.
enemies on the screen at a time, that's plenty. I mean, until I get them all wrangled into like a circle here, right?
You know what's funny is back in the day, we're talking, I don't even remember, like maybe early 80s or something. I had a Texas Instruments, a TI-994A. Okay, you can look it up, Google it. And
I had two.
I know, yeah. I'm talking to the people who are like, what? What did he just say? What did he just call me? You know, there was trade magazines at the time. You know, paper. They used to write things on paper, and they had these programs in it, and one of them was a game where you were in a parking garage, and there was some zombie chasing you, right? And all the cars, the walls, everything were just blocks on the screen, and you were a colored block, and then there was another colored block that would start off on the other side of the screen, and it would it would basically make its way to you, but it was clear that it was navigating based on where you were. So if you were on the complete opposite side of the screen, if you moved to the top, this thing would start navigating across the screen to the top, and then if you moved down, it would start navigating down, right? So, but I remember the code for that being like super simple to follow. And so what you're describing here is basically the same principle, 20, 30 years later.
Yeah, no, this is the thing about games. I mean, yes, the answer is yes. What you're saying is absolutely true. And when it comes to games, the mechanics have all been done. Somehow, some way, every mechanic that you see in a game has been done. It may have been coded a different way, etc., but there are only so many ways under the sun to express an idea, and there are only so many ways, and when I say that is, I'm not talking about the aesthetics. Your game had squares, this game has, nicer looking zombies. But the premise is the same. Enemy moves towards you in some fashion, right? It's the algorithm is used. There's only so many algorithms out there. So people learn these things. You can just apply it over and over to new games and new variations, and certainly create new experiences. But the guts are the guts. That's you learn them once and you use them over and over.
Yeah, gravity always pulls down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for the code because I really wanted to show it to you. Enemy manager. There we go. Let me find it. We were just talking about it. I might as well just point it out to you. Enemy move to player. Here it is. So there's a function here in the enemy manager called move to player. Let me make it bigger so you can see it. And basically what it is, it's a method, if you will, a function that I attach to the enemy. So I say function enemy dot move to player, and then it has the argument self. So later I can call it like this, enemy move to player. But the other thing that it lets me do is it lets me pass in enemy as the onComplete as long as I say enemy onComplete equals move to player. Now I'm going a little fast, so I'll explain it in a minute. But let's look at the actual code first. First two lines, totally boring. Is the game running? Did the enemy get deleted since the last time I came in here? If so, don't do anything. These two lines are just basically keeping you from running when the game's not running, or trying to do something when we no longer have a valid enemy to operate on. But assuming we get past that, all we do is we calculate a vector from the enemy to the player, and that's what this is. It's just a table with two entries, x and y, in it. And then we take that and we pass it into vectored angle, which is, this is math 2D, and basically what I've done is I have localized the function and given it a name that I can remember. So I call it vector to angle. And that takes the vector and converts it into an angle. And then I use that angle. First of all, I store it in the enemy because I use that other places in the code, which isn't really important at this point. But I keep track of it because I'm not really rotating the enemy. What I'm doing is choosing the right animation to play. So I could have said rotation like this. I go changing code and probably messing up the game, but I don't really want to rotate the enemy. In fact, if I ran this right now, this would be wrong. Let's just see what's going on here. Now we run it, and my zombies are all goofed up because he's rotated. So we talked about this before, but all the players, all the animations in here, they don't rotate. What rotates is the actual playing animation. The animation itself plays in such a way that it looks like you're rotated. So anyways, then I calculate the distance, the length of the vector. So I got a vector, which is just, I subtracted the distance between the two, gives me this vector. I calculate the length, and then remember how I said that I give like a random speed to the zombie? So I say here, speed is equal to your current speed if you have one. But if you don't have one, call math random and get a value between 75 and 150. So that's going to be your pixels per second speed. That's how many pixels you move in a second. And then I store it on the player. So, and then I calculate...
That's a nice little touch too, because then not all the enemies are like headed at the same speed to the player.
Right. Yeah, I mean it totally throws you off, especially if you're like used to dealing with slow zombies. and then suddenly one comes in, he's booking at twice the rate of the last guy. You're like, whoa, slow down, coaches. And the cool thing is as they're chasing you, once they've got a speed, they don't change their speed. They're going to continue to run or move at that rate until you kill them or until they get you.
I'd love to hear that in a zombie movie. Whoa, slow down, coaches.
Slow down there, coaches. Whoa. But the algorithm we need here is we need to calculate the time our transition is going to take, and that is simply this does not need to be in here. That is simply the speed, the length divided by the speed, then multiplied by 1,000 because we need it in milliseconds, not seconds. So we get, this is seconds, and then we need to make that in milliseconds. We multiply it by 1,000. So it's in the right, I can't think of the right word here.
Unit? No.
Measure. Anyways, doesn't matter. So we need 1,000 times the length divided by the speed, and that's it. And then all I do then is I make sure that it's playing the correct animation based on the angle that it's facing, or supposedly facing. And I did air quotes like you could see me there. And then I do a transition. Okay, so I transition self, which is the enemy, and I tell it to go to where the player is. I don't even use the vectors here. All this vector math here was so I could calculate the time. That's all I needed. I needed to get the length of the distance between them so I could measure that in pixels and then divide it by my pixel speed to get time. I hope that makes sense. And then here's the trick. I love this trick. I use it all the time. If you want the player to do what it just did again, what you need to do is find a way to pass this function in here. So transition has a argument called onComplete, and normally people pass in like function, do something, end, right? Like that. But people forget, and I mention it on the show a lot, is that if the enemy has a field on it called onComplete, then you can just simply pass in, and I should have said here is self. You can simply pass in the thing you're operating on. So if you're operating on this, and it has a field or a function called onComplete attached to it, then when transition gets done, it'll say, hey, look, you passed in onComplete, and by the way, there's a function on that guy, this object, called onComplete. I'll run that. And so here I've called it move to player because I want to call it later. But then I simply say enemy onComplete is equal to, and I pointed at move to player. Move to player takes an argument self, and so when this onComplete call is executed, it runs the same function again, which is the one that just transitioned it. So you get this looping transition. It's transition, complete, run another one, do the calculation again, continue, forever.
The only time you'd ever want an infinite loop.
Yeah, this is, it's an infinite loop, but not in the sense that it operates every frame. So this is the nickel version of AI. The 10 cents version is simply doing a transition, but only going part way. So instead of trying to walk all the way to the player, use that vector information and calculate a point someplace between yourself, the enemy, and the player, and then calculate that distance, walk to that point, and then continue. So in other words, walk a shorter distance, and then check again to see if you need to change direction.
Okay, I want to point out one thing while you're here that it's probably obvious to a lot of people, but it may not be obvious to somebody who's brand new to this, to creating games. And that is that at this point you're moving the player, but you're also somewhere else in the code you are flipping through those individual frames that make the player look like they're walking.
Right.
So, like right there, yeah, you say play, angle, animation, walking, and then it's probably somewhere in the code. It's actually making the player appear to be walking, but the player would be stationary unless you moved him. And then when you, in the combination of transitioning and frame animation, that's where it actually looks like it's walking.
Exactly.
And I don't think those things are ever always put together, and it just seems like worth noting.
The cool thing about this game, not to give myself accolades, but useful to other people, is that the player uses the Reiner animations, the enemies use the Reiner, everything's using the Reiner animations. And almost all of these Reiner animations that I'm using for the moving good guys and bad guys have the same sort of like layout. They have the same organization. And so what I was able to do was to create this module, which I showed you guys before, called Sprite Maker. And Sprite Maker is sort of like a generic loader player, which then, in any one of these, for example, the green zombie maker, I require Sprite Maker, and then I use it to build up the sprite sheets and to create the characters. And then if I need to, for example, let's look in Arrow Maker. I think that's an example that I did something different. So Arrow Maker, no, I'm not going to be able to find one. Sorry, I'm trying to give you a good example here. What I was going to say, I can't find it right now, but one of these makers uses the Sprite Maker method to load, but then it needed to do something different when I played it. So I wrote my own local create. So I didn't call the one for Sprite Maker. I made my own. So what I've done here is like a poor man's object-oriented code. It's not really object-oriented, but what I did was I leveraged a module over and over for doing common work. And then when a specific instance needed to be a little bit different, then I coded it myself the special way. So,
let me ask you. You said you were working with these pre-existing Sprite packs and stuff, so the timing has already been kind of worked out for you in terms of what the players what the character's stride should be and things like that. Is there ever a point where you can get out of whack where the player looks like he's sort of gliding across the screen when not actually walking across the screen?
Absolutely. Balancing the in fact, let's go back to the game, and I'll just.
Sorry, I don't want to derail, but it feels like these are important.
That's an excellent question. So let's look at these guys. They all look like they're moving at a good rate. Let's see if we can get a guy to come on screen who's moving super fast. Let's just keep killing them until they're fast. Or we could do that. We could find a way to crash the game in the demo. So here's one. At an angle, this green zombie looks, it's probably going to be really hard to tell. You're going to need to play with this for a while. But basically, when they move
the Hangout frame rates are terrible too.
I'm just going to change the speed so we can see this more clearly.
Yeah, the Hangout frame rates, probably terrible too, because as we move, the characters are skipping around on the screen.
Yeah, sorry. So here, I'm going to rerun it now that they're going to be moving way too fast. So I'll just let it run over and over. So you can see, even now, they look pretty good. But what I encourage people to do is go to line 161 in the enemy manager and pump up the speeds to be really ridiculously high, from 75 to 275. And then in answer to your question, what you're going to see is that the speed at which the guys are moving does not match the rate that their legs are moving. They look like they're, as you say, gliding. They're sort of moving their legs, but they're sort of like ghosting it over the ground, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't dealt with, there's a solution to this which I have not implemented yet, and the solution to that is any individual object that is playing a sprite animation, you can change the time scale for that particular object. And so what I would do in that case is I would have a base scale. So let's say 100 is our base speed that I get the animation just right for. But then let's say the speed is 150. I could simply give it a factor of 1.5 and change the animation scale for this instance of this player so that it would play its own animation faster so that it seemed to match the rate at which the enemy was walking.
So let me say that back to you so I know I'm clear. So what you're saying is that we have a rate at which we flip back and forth between these individual frames of a sprite.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have the speed at which we move those sprites from, let's just say, one side of the screen to the other. And we can adjust either one of those values to try to walk in, no pun intended, try to walk in the visual effect.
Right. So what I do here is I set up, what you're seeing here is the code to set up the individual walking animations, disintegrate, etc. So for example, the green zombie has 8 frames in the walking animation. And I tell it that it must play all 8 frames within 800 milliseconds. So it gets 100 milliseconds to play each frame. But that's great if the zombie is walking at a speed that makes this animation time look good.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, I don't adjust it here. I don't create like walking and then walking fast and walking super fast. I don't create a whole bunch of these. Instead, what I would do is in here, I would realize that this one's going to be moving faster. And let me see if I can find. I'm looking for the exact value in the.
So you just adjust it on the fly, then based on.
Yeah, let me. I'm sorry. I wanted to show people the exact reference, so this
Yeah.
would make more sense.
So what I'm picturing is you can when you're talking about the 800 milliseconds there, you can make a zombie walk slow, like maybe after it's had a healthy brains meal, right? It's feeling a little heavy. You might want to walk a little slower, and then you got your fast walking mall zombie who's really motivated and trying to catch you. They might their little legs might be like
A mall zombie.
a mall zombie. Yeah. Well, I don't. Sorry to anybody who walks the malls, but I'm not calling you a zombie.
Y'all, she's walking into malls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to show you the opposite now. So we
Good.
keep talking, Charles, but I'm going to change this while we're doing this.
We're going to get hate mail from the mall walkers of America. You called us mall zombies. No, I wasn't calling you
I don't know
a
what
mall
I'm doing
zombie.
here. I've got an example of this already. I'm so dumb sometimes, I swear. If you guys
I hate that. I hate when I do things in advance and then I forget that I do them, and then I do them, and then I remember that I did them, and then I'm like, oh, and it's just a waste of time.
I especially hate it when somebody says it like that. Totally lost me. If you go into the top-down shooter app folder, we've been looking at the game, but there is a folder here called Sprites. Open that up and look at the simple one. And this demonstrates exactly what I was talking about, which is the timescale. All four of these guys are the same animation, but each instance I've changed the timescale. So this one's running at half rate. This one's running at the regular full rate. This one's 2 times. And this one's running at 10 times. So he's Mr. Hyper. So
yeah, and good. And the reason I really wanted to bring that up was you're talking about working with pre-existing animation packs. I'm like, well, you're obviously not going to have the assets to go back and change that. You have to kind of continue to work with it as is. And so how do you make those adjustments? And so there you go.
Exactly. And the beauty of this parameter is you can change it at any time. If the guy slows down or speeds up and you need that animation to synchronize basically with your new rate, change the timescale.
So you could have you could drop like a spell, right? And then everybody, all the zombies, as soon as they enter the cloud, they slow down.
And then I just change the timescale to half, and everything looks good.
Steven, did you just make a "mwah" face? Mwah.
No, I know what he did over there. He said, "Raw, Zibalba." Gotta do it, man. Product placement. They're like, that's not our game. Why are you saying Zibalba? Stop it. We make much more beautiful games than that, man.
Yeah.
So object timescale, which is a property of the sprite object. So really big there in the documentation. But let me go undo my changes here so we don't have anything all goofed up. Okay. So we're past time. So the question exists now. I said to you last week after hours that I would not take us past time for no reason.
Yeah.
I think we're actually at a good stopping point. We got to talk about that kind of interesting topic there.
Yeah, we kind of went out to the end, right? We were going to do
way out to the end. We just went right out to navigation.
Yeah, we were going to limit the character to a square, so that they didn't. Yep.
Oh, here they are. They're running it. Oh yeah! Come on, boys, you can get me.
Zombie mud. And then we were going to do the spawning of the enemies and stuff like that, and then we were going to do the nickel version of pathfinding, which we did. So yeah, let's stop there. We'll pick up next week. We'll go either more in depth in the code on the first 2 topics, or we'll explore something else. I'm not sure exactly which.
We might do something because I kind of like this. So I know I'm talking now past the end, but one thing I do is I set up sort of like the example.
Yeah.
And then we get there, and it's like this long, drawn-out, painful experience. Sometimes, in my opinion, afterwards I go, oh man, I hope I didn't lose people in that discussion. But today what happened is I'm just sort of talking, and then it struck me that this whole, when I made the joke about the nickel version of AI, that it was actually quite interesting. And so I will continue to make this, but we may simply not wing it, but pick out the juicy bits next week.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you've again, we've talked about this before. You have provided all the code, and we've talked about these things in other videos and stuff like that. So I think at this point, someone should be able to pick the code apart. And if they have questions, and I'm talking to you, the listener now, you, the viewer, if you have questions, that would be a great time to put those in the comments and let us know so that we can answer those questions on the next show. And that might get us into a spiral where we're pushing time more and more, but it would at least be beneficial directly to you as you look through the code, have questions about how something works, and then we can talk about it, right? So one way would be sort of a linear push, and the other way would be more focused on specific aspects of the code. So go download it. The links are in the show notes. Like we said at the top of the show, there are 5 different sessions that you can go and explore. And I would say that even if you're doing a mobile game, you can still take a lot of these concepts that are in this code and repurpose them for the mobile game. I'm sure the reticle and things like that probably are different on mobile, but Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's a lot of things here that I see that could certainly be applied to mobile.
Even the reticle. Actually, you know what? If you had a virtual joystick in your game, you could use the virtual joystick to control the reticle.
That's cool. That's true.
There's a number of things here. But I just wanted to point out that you said that people should go ahead and traipse through this code, and they should. There's a lot of code, but realize that this time I've been making a lot of effort to really keep the code small. So even the most complicated piece of code that we've got, which is the player, is still less than 300 lines of code. It's got lots of comments in it, pretty much tell you everything that I'm doing. And if I don't have good comments, which I pretty much do, the names convey what the code is supposed to be doing. So it should be more like reading than coding.
And you've got each one is broken up into a logical order. So I think this is again another good example of how to think about structuring your application, how to break things up into modules, how to repurpose, create pieces of code that you can repurpose, which is the elusive, unicorn in software. So anyway, unicorns. Yeah, unicorns, tasty.
And this is all pure Lua, pure Corona.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
Pretty much not see anything in here that says SK. If it's in here, it'll go away. So the more you look at it, the more I work on it, the more pure it will become.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, there you go. We're going to put links in the show notes. Go check them out. Until then, next week, until next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific, have a great week and happy coding.